Good evening. This evening I'm going to read you one of my favourite books that I didn't read till I was an adult. In fact, I didn't read anything by this author until I was an adult, but I loved so much that at the end of it, I believed so much in the writing, I questioned my own beliefs about Yetis and whether they were true. This book is called King of the Cloud Forests and it's written by Morpurgo. Let's have a little delve into chapter 1. I am called Ashley Anderson. Ashley after my mother's father, so I was told, and Anderson after my father, of course, whom I remember so well that I only have to close my eyes to have him standing before me. He was an American by birth, from New England, who grew up with one single-minded and determined ambition, to go to China and spread the word of God. Some people run away to sea or to join the army. My father ran away to be a missionary when he was 15. By then he was already an imposing figure, over 6 feet tall and broad with it, and able to pass himself off as a 20-year-old to the missionary society, who were only too anxious to have someone of his youth and enthusiasm. By the time he was nearly 20, he was establishing his own mission outside the town of Pingting Chow. With his own hands he built a chapel and hospital compound, and within a few years had become so successful that he had to send for help. There were just too many people flooding into the mission, mostly for treatment and medicines and not God. But as my own father would say, how you bring a man to God is unimportant, just as long as he comes. It was only a few yards from the hospital to the chapel, and all the patients had come to the chapel in the morning if they did not wish to incur my father's anger, and no one ever wanted to do that. He stood fully a foot higher than anyone else, and with his thunderous voice and obvious physical strength, was not a person to tangle with. He was feared, respected, and even worshipped by the congregation to whom he had devoted his life. I never once heard him preach a sermon to them. He always said Jesus had done that better than he ever could. Example was the only way to bring Jesus to the Chinese. That's what he said, but if example did not work, he would resort to persuasion of almost any kind. He was not a man to be thwarted. So they came to the mission in their hundreds, and that was why he had to send for another doctor, and that was why my mother came. I have no face to remember my mother by, but my father spoke of her so often that I feel I know her as well as if I'd grown up with her. My father first saw her, as he often told me, at the railway station in Pingting Chow, where he went to meet her. She'd been working as a doctor at the mission headquarters in Shanghai for some years. She had not come alone, but with a Tibetan called Song Sung, soon to be known to us all as Uncle Sung. My father adored her the moment he first set eyes on her. Sent from God, were the first words he spoke to her, and she replied, "Stuff and nonsense, Mr. Anderson. Now you best help Sung with the language. Sung is not my servant, he's my medical assistant. There's a lot of it, Mr. Anderson. It's very heavy and you're a lot younger than he is. Oh, and by the way, Sung is a Buddhist and he's staying a Buddhist, so don't even try to convert him. If you do, he's quite liable to convert you. I know, I've tried." "Perhaps you haven't tried hard enough," said my father. "She has," said Uncle Sung. "We'll see," said my father, and the challenge was to make them allies in life from the first meeting. How often I was to witness their long philosophical debates, understanding little or nothing of what was said, but sensing always their deep mutual respect and affection. As the years passed, Uncle Sung became the cement that held the mission together. He was the tireless organiser, the foreman, the negotiator, the peacemaker. As the mission flourished, he became more and more indispensable to my father and mother. Indeed, it was Uncle Sung that brought them together. I suppose you could say I wouldn't even have been born without Uncle Sung. With Uncle Sung's help and encouragement, my father courted my mother for a full year before she even realised it. All the while, the mission became more and more overstretched. The people poured in as news of the wonderful new lady doctor from Shanghai spread through the province. Uncle Sung always told me that it was he who suggested the two of them went out into the countryside to take medicine to the villages, and so the two of them set off into the hills, leaving Uncle Sung to manage the mission without them for a few days. When they came back, she scolded Uncle Sung for deliberately engineering the whole thing, but asked him to give her away at his wedding.